All right, thank you, Amanda. Yeah, it's about transforming the business of palm oil. I guess most of us here are not aware that this red-orange fruit became part of our lives as an ingredient, a practically invisible ingredient in most of the products we're using during the day, from the moment we get up in the morning until the moment we go to bed in the evening. It's a beautiful fruit. Beautiful red-orange fruit. It's a very versatile fruit, but it's also a very controversial fruit. I guess most of you have come to learn or know palm oil for its very destructive, it's a very destructive crop. It's been growing tremendously over the last 20 years as an ingredient in everyday products, and due to that, it's become a driver for deforestation, for wildlife habitat loss, for the displacement of indigenous communities, and for labor right abuses. And this is really what most of the conventional palm oil business is about. In fact, it's what most of the sector is about. And it's what Greenpeace chose to label dirty palm oil. And besides palm oil being an ingredient that's practically invisible in a lot of the products that we are all using every day, it's also a product and an ingredient that we often don't know the sources of. So it's very hard to trace it back to where it's originated. And that is because it's most often produced in large monocrop plantations, or it's produced by the millions of smallholder farmers that surround those plantations, not being a link in international value chains, that deliver their fruits anonymously to large-scale mills where their fruits get processed into crude palm oil, which is being shipped to markets around the world in bulk. But this is also what palm oil can look like. Palm oil grown using 100% organic practices, without forests being cut down, without forests being burned down, and where plantations and conservation areas are managed in a way that the animals, for instance for us, the sloth in Ecuador, can continue to roam free, and where farmers are being paid a premium for the fruit they are growing, and where worker rights are respected. And we like to call it palm done right. And we, Natural Habitats, are bringing the sustainably grown palm oil from Ecuador to brands in Europe and the US. And we have a very simple way of showing in the markets what the difference is between palm done right and conflict palm oil. And we're showing brand partners and brand manufacturers that there's in fact a choice to be made. In 2009, our CEO, Alfons van der Aa, founded Natural Habitats, and he was convinced that palm could be grown differently. And he started off with a small plantation of its own, only to find out very soon that if he were to build a viable business, he had to collaborate with the farmers locally. So he engaged with the local farmer community, and 2 years later, in 2011, we had the first 28 independent farmers joining his organic palm journey. And we have had farmers, new farmers, small, big, independent farmers joining our journey ever since. In 2013, we started a organic palm business in West Africa, in Sierra Leone, where we are working with smallholder farmers, and where we also set up a small own palm development. So working with farmers, whether big and small, buying their fruits, processing their fruits in our own mills in Ecuador and in Sierra Leone, meant and still means that we have to collaborate actively together. And that means that we are supporting farmers, we are training farmers, educating farmers in good agricultural practice, in organic fertilization, but also showing them the importance of cover crops in order to replace inputs, It's also about planting native trees as buffer zones, and it's teaching them how important it is to preserve the forest and wildlife. It also meant we had to group our farmers in associations, giving them certification support. We are organic, Fair for Life, RSPO, and Rainforest Alliance certified, and that involves a lot of work. So it is important that we support the farmers with whom we work in order to become certified as well. And of course, it means paying a premium compared to conventional palm oil. And it is also, we support the local communities. To date, we are working with 2,500 smallholder farmers in Sierra Leone, and we are actively collaborating with 178 independent farms in Ecuador. And the guy in the middle you see here, that's Mario. Mario is one of the proud palm and right farmers in Ecuador. And he's very happy that he has transitioned from being a conventional palm grower to an organic palm grower. And when I met him last December, he said that he was very happy that he can literally breathe again in his plantation because he's not using chemicals anymore. He's happy that he sees nature becoming a bigger part of his plantation. And he also said, because he's growing, of course, palm organically, which involves more work to manage his farm, that he's created more jobs. So by implementing palm done right, and we're creating benefits for our farmers in Africa and in Ecuador, but we're also creating benefits for brands in the US and in Europe, because they now know where the palm oil comes from and how it was grown. And Neil will tell you more about palm done right in the market.
Thank you, Monique. Go like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to speak to what we are doing to build this bridge. We were asked to participate in this talk and seminar here because of what we've done to create a way to be able to reach the brands and ultimately the consumer with this story. I got involved in this project about 3 years ago. I have a background in fats and oils, running Spectrum Organic Products for 16 years and building a brand from the ground up, doing pioneering work in organic oils and fats, working with farmers, processors, and having our own infrastructure. And there was a gap in time when I got out of the oil business and when Alphonse van der Aad, the founder of Natural Habitat, sought me out for my background and knowledge to help him establish the business here in the United States. I started to dig deeply into the supply chain and really understand what was going on the ground. And I was so smitten by the fact that this was the only 100% organic and fair trade supply chain in the world, and the work that was being done to convert conventional farms to organic was in itself a regenerative step in really creating a supply chain that could truly be represented in a way that was newly defining how palm should be done. And about a year into it, seeing and hearing all of the negative publicity about palm, because there is a lot of it, and a lot of wind and resistance against the anti-palm movement that's out there, we decided that we really needed to tell the story in a way that was very both transparent and vivid in how it describes, as Monique did, what we do at the farm level through the processing system to the brands. So we developed basically a toolkit called Palm Done Right for the brands that are participating in this to be able to use to communicate the message about how palm can be done in a way that is regenerating instead of all of what they hear in the media about how it's done in such a destructive way. So these brands that you see here are all in some form using the Palm Done Right, what I call toolkit, marketing toolkit, to help them educate and market. We're now reaching out to retailers with a call to action. My own personal objective with this is to get what we call conflict palm out of the natural product industry. It doesn't meet the values of our industry, but it's still prolific in a lot of products. And there is an alternative, and we want to grow that alternative. We have, besides Natural Habitats, there's 2 other organic producers in the world, actually 3 with the program that Dr. Bronner's does in Ghana. And these are all part of what we consider to be palm done right, that offers a true alternative to destructive palm, what we call conflict palm, that comes out of Asia. So these are just some examples of how palm done right is being used to send this message with on-label use. This is not a certification program. It's essentially a tool, a way for the retailer, the brand, the consumer to understand the story behind it. It's storytelling, really, in the form of creating a way to communicate between the farm and ultimately the consumer. And this next phase for us, which is really taking it to the retail community to help support the message, help support products that are sold in their stores that is organic, that has palm, that's done right. And the call to action to them is to create standards, just like we've created standards for a lot of other products, to get conflict palm out of our industry. So these are products that are using palm that's been grown right, and I think it establishes for the industry a standard that we'd like to see become much more deeply embedded in the values of our industry. We have taken some first initial steps to actually do some regenerative agriculture projects in Ecuador with the farmers. We had in last fall a seminar with TerraGenesis helping us present to 50 of our farmers a opportunity to look at what it would take to really take the next step from organic to regenerative. So we're now looking at taking 2 or 3 of the farms and doing some of that initial work to create a more diverse ecosystem within their farms. These are average 30-hectare farms that have, for the most part, 1 block of palm, and we're trying to look at ways that we can create a more diverse system within these farms. And these are 2nd and 3rd generation farms that originally were either cattle grazing or some other form, so there's no deforestation being done. It's all taking conventional farms and turning them into organic. And we've got new farms coming on all the time that are part of this transformation. So the next step now is to try to look at incorporating some true regenerative practices and starting to monitor carbon sequestration and other benefits that can come from it. Thank you very much.